Danielle Calloway Reeves was 34 years old when her husband leaned in close at his own 40th birthday party and told her to leave. Not whisper close. Close enough for his mother to hear. Close enough for the co-worker seated 2 chairs down, Brianna, 12 years younger, freshly perfumed, to hear too. Andre said Danny was killing the vibe. Said everyone could feel her watching him. Said it twice, the second time flatter than the first. Just leave, Danny. He didn't know she'd already found the hotel charge, the second bank account, the text thread about figuring out the Danny situation once the party was over. He smiled as she picked up her purse, certain he'd just solved a problem. He had no idea every vendor at that party, the caterer, the bar, the photographer, was running on autopay through an account only she controlled. Danny said, "Okay," and walked out onto the patio. Andre returned to his guests, victorious. He had no idea what was already in motion. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from today, and if stories like this speak to you, hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story is even more intense. The spreadsheet had 12 tabs. Danny had color-coded each one. Green for confirmed vendors, yellow for pending, red for anything that still needed her attention. Right now, there was almost nothing left in red. That was how she liked it. She sat at the kitchen table in her robe, her second cup of coffee going cold beside her laptop. The morning light came through the window over the sink in long, flat strips, falling across the table and the stack of vendor contracts she'd printed and paper-clipped in order of due date. The birthday cake deposit was due today. The bartending invoice had to be signed and returned by Thursday. The florist needed a final head count by Friday morning. Danny opened the caterer's contract and read through the payment terms one more time, even though she already had them memorized. She was that kind of person. From the hallway, she heard the sound of Andre's electric razor start up, then stop, then start again. Then his voice, muffled through the bathroom door. "Babe, did you move my gray blazer?" "Dry cleaning bag," she called back. "Left side of the closet, behind your suits." A pause. "Got it." She went back to the spreadsheet. Catering, confirmed. Venue, confirmed. Photographer, confirmed. She clicked over to the tab labeled Guests and scrolled down the list of 80 names, checking the column she'd created for dietary restrictions. Lorraine Reeves, Andre's mother, was flagged in yellow. No shellfish, low sodium. Confirmed with caterer, 10-2. Andre came out of the bedroom straightening his collar. He looked good. He'd been looking good lately. Better than he had in years, honestly. 15 pounds gone since the spring. He joined a gym in March and started going before work 4 mornings a week, sometimes 5. She'd noticed. She'd even told him so, one morning a few weeks back, when she'd watched him button his shirt and thought, quietly, that she hadn't seen him look like that since they were dating. He stopped by the coffee maker and poured a cup, then leaned against the counter and looked over at her. "Still working on that thing?" "Almost done." She clicked to the green tab. "Cake deposit's due this morning. I'll send it after you leave." "You're incredible, you know that?" He said it easily, casually, the way someone says thank you to a valet. Genuine enough, but not really looking at you when they say it. She smiled anyway. He came around the table and kissed the top of her head. She caught a scent she didn't recognize. Sharp, woody, something with cedar in it. "Is that new cologne?" she asked. Got it for the work events. Henderson keeps saying I need to look the part at these regional things." He took a sip of his coffee and set the mug in the sink without rinsing it. She made a small mental note. She would rinse it before she left. "You nervous about 40? She asked. She kept her eyes on the screen. She was smiling. He made a sound, short and flat. "No." I said no, Danny." He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. "Can we not do the 40 thing right now? I'm about to get in the car." She didn't say anything else. She watched him check his phone, slide it into his pocket, and pick up his overnight bag from near the door. "I'll call you tonight," he said. "Conference runs through tomorrow, so I'll probably be back Friday morning." "Drive safe." The door closed. She sat for a moment and listened to the garage open, then the sound of his car reversing down the driveway. Then nothing. She rinsed his mug, then she sat back down. The cake deposit took 4 minutes to process. She emailed the receipt to the vendor folder she'd set up on her laptop, the one labeled Andre 40, Final. Then she opened the joint credit card account to pull the most recent statement. She needed the last 4 digits on the catering charge to match it against the contract before she sent the final payment. She scrolled through the charges. Gas station, grocery run, her gym membership, the florist, the venue deposit, which she already had receipts for, and then, between a hardware store charge and a charge from the grocery run, something small. A hotel. 1 night, $212. She looked at the date. She looked at it again. The 3rd weekend in September. The weekend Andre had driven up to see his college roommate, Kevin, the one who just had a second baby and couldn't really travel. The trip he'd mentioned twice before he left, and once more when he got back, telling her how good it was to catch up, how Kevin was exhausted, but happy. She hadn't checked that card statement yet. She'd been busy. She was always busy. The charge sat there on the screen, clean and small and total. Danny set her coffee down. She didn't say anything out loud. She didn't close the laptop. She just looked at the date one more time, and the name of the hotel, and the amount, and then she opened a new tab and pulled up a map to see exactly where that hotel was. When Andre called that night, she answered on the second ring. Her voice was warm, easy. She didn't ask. She started at 6 a.m. Andre wouldn't be home until Friday. That gave her 2 days. She didn't need 2 days. Danny sat at the kitchen table in the same spot she always did, but the vendor spreadsheet was closed now. She had a fresh cup of coffee and a legal pad and her reading glasses, which she only wore when she needed to see something clearly. She logged into the bank's online portal. She started with their joint checking account. She pulled up the last 12 months of transactions and began reading through them the way she read vendor contracts, methodically, top to bottom, looking for anything that didn't match what she already knew. Most of it was familiar. Utilities, groceries, her car payment, the gym memberships, Andre's dry cleaning. But there were gaps. The paycheck deposits from Andre's job came in twice a month, consistent as clockwork. She knew the amounts, had always known them, but somewhere in the last 6 months, the deposits had started landing smaller than they used to. Not by much. Enough that it was easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. 200 here, 300 there. She wrote the dates and amounts on the legal pad. Then she opened a second browser tab and went to the website of the bank where Andre kept his old personal account, the one from before they were married, the one he'd always said had almost nothing in it. She knew the login. She'd known it for years. He'd never changed it. She typed it in. The account had $4,340 in it. She sat very still for a moment. Then she clicked on transaction history. He'd opened a second account at the same bank 6 months ago. The link was right there in the left sidebar, listed under his profile. Checking, Andre R., opened 04-2024. She clicked it. The transfers were small and regular. They came in every other week, just before his paycheck hit their joint account. He'd been skimming off the top. She scrolled through the purchases on the second account, a jewelry purchase from a boutique she'd never heard of, $280 in November, another one in January, a different store, $460. A charge from a lingerie retailer in February, not the kind of thing she'd ever owned. She knew the brand. It wasn't made for women who wanted to feel comfortable. She wrote it all down. Then there was a 3-day charge from a rental company out by Lake Carver, dated the second weekend in August. She'd been at her cousin's bachelorette that weekend. She hadn't thought about what Andre was doing. She hadn't thought to wonder. She wrote that down too. She found the tablet in the kitchen drawer, buried under takeout menus and a spare phone charger and a coupon mailer she kept meaning to throw away. It was an older model, the one they'd used when they first moved into this house, back when they'd had one streaming service and shared a Netflix queue like it was a thing that mattered. She hadn't touched it in almost a year. She powered it on. It took a minute to wake up. The cloud sync had kept running the whole time it sat in that drawer. All of Andre's accounts, his messages, his notes, his photos, were still feeding into it on autopilot. He hadn't thought to check. He probably hadn't thought about this tablet at all. She tapped on his messages. Brianna Holt's thread was near the top. Danny didn't recognize the name at first. She opened the thread and scrolled up to find the beginning. The messages went back 8 months. The first few were short, professional. Great meeting today. Drinks after Thursday? And then, fast, the way a fire finds dry wood. They weren't professional anymore. She read slowly. She didn't rush. By the time she reached the recent messages, the ones from the last 2 weeks, she had a clear picture. Brianna was 27. She worked in Andre's office. She called him A in her texts, which Danny thought was the kind of detail that said a lot about a person. The message that stopped her was from 8 days ago. "When are we going to sort things out?" Brianna had written. "I'm tired of waiting." And Andre had written back, "After the party. I'm handling the Danny situation after the party. Just be patient." The Danny situation. She read it twice. She looked at the words and she thought about the spreadsheet with 12 tabs, and the florist who knew Lorraine's dietary restrictions, and the cake deposit she'd sent that morning, and the 3 months she'd spent building something for a man who had turned her into a problem he was planning to solve. She set the tablet down on the table. She picked up her legal pad and turned to a clean page. She wrote the date at the top. Then she started writing down every vendor tied to the birthday party. The venue, the caterer, the bartending service, the florist, the photographer, the DJ, and next to each name, she noted which account the payment authorization ran through. Every single one ran through her. She already knew that. She'd set it up that way because she always set things up, because that was who she was. For the first time in 3 months, she was glad she had. The venue looked exactly the way Danny had planned it. She had spent 3 months making sure of that. The Edison bulbs strung above the main hall threw a warm amber light over everything. The white linen tablecloths, the centerpieces she'd sourced from a florist in Midtown, the custom banner that read, "Andre Reeves, 40 and fine," in gold letters she had personally approved. The bar ran along the far wall, fully stocked, 2 bartenders in black moving fast and smooth. The DJ was tucked into the corner near the dance floor, playing something low and easy while people were still eating. The cake, 5 tiers, chocolate with salted caramel buttercream, sat on its own table near the entrance so nobody could miss it. 80 people filled the room. Andre knew all of them. Danny had invited most of them. She stood near the edge of the hall with a glass of sparkling water and watched her husband work the room. Andre was good at this. She had always known that. He moved from group to group with that easy, wide smile, touching shoulders, laughing loud, wearing the charcoal suit she had picked up from the tailor on Tuesday. He looked good in it. He knew he looked good in it. She sipped her water and watched. Brianna arrived at 7:15. She was younger than Danny had imagined, even knowing the number. 27 looked a specific way when it walked into a room, bright and unhurried, like it had all the time in the world. She wore a deep green dress, and her hair was down. She introduced herself to the people nearest the door as a colleague of Andre's, which was true, the way a lit match is technically just a piece of wood. Andre spotted her from across the room. Danny watched his face change, just for a second. Then the wide smile came back, easy as breathing, and he crossed the room to greet her the way he greeted everyone, with a handshake and a laugh and a hand briefly at her elbow. Casual. Practiced. Brianna was seated at table 4. Danny had not assigned anyone to table 4. She stood with her sparkling water and did not move her face at all. By 8:30, the champagne toast was done and the room was loose and warm. People were dancing. Kids from Andre's office were huddled near the bar doing shots. Lorraine Reeves, 63 years old and dressed in the purple wrap dress Danny had suggested when they'd gone shopping together in March, was seated at a high top near the windows, talking to a woman from their old neighborhood. Danny was standing near the edge of the bar, not drinking, not talking, watching the cake table, because someone needed to coordinate the cake cutting and the photographer needed to be in position, and no one else in this room was thinking about any of that. Andre appeared at her side. "Can I talk to you for a second?" he said. His voice had the particular texture it got when he'd had 2 glasses of champagne and was feeling generous with himself. She turned toward him. "Sure." He moved her a half step toward the wall, which he probably thought was private. It wasn't. The bar was 3 feet away. 2 men from his sales team were standing there. Lorraine's high top was 6 feet to the left. "You've been standing in the same spot all night," he said. You've barely talked to anyone. I've been watching the vendors, Danny said. That's what I do. You're killing the vibe. He said it low, but not low enough. Everyone can feel you watching. You're making people uncomfortable. She looked at him. I need you to. He glanced toward the room, toward Brianna's table specifically, though she didn't think he knew she clocked it. Just go home, Danny. Take the car. You're clearly not having fun. I'm fine, she said. Danny. His voice went flat. The warmth drained out of it the way water drains from a tub. Just leave. Let me have my night. The two men at the bar had gone quiet. She could feel it without looking. From 6 feet away, she heard a chair shift. Lorraine's chair. Danny held her purse strap in both hands. She looked at her husband's face, at the impatience in it, at the way he was looking slightly past her, toward the rest of the room, already moving on, already done with her before she'd even answered. Okay, she said. She walked toward the side exit, the one that opened onto the patio. She kept her back straight. She did not look at table 4. The patio was small. String lights, 2 iron benches, a potted tree that hadn't been her idea. The door swung shut behind her, and the noise of the party dropped to a muffled thump. She opened her purse. She took out her phone. She called the venue coordinator first, then the catering company, then the bartending service, then the photographer. Each call was short. She gave her name, the event name, and the authorization code she had set up when she booked each contract. She was back inside within 18 minutes. She stood in the doorway to the main hall. At the bar, both bartenders had stopped pouring. One was already reaching for bottles to cap. A catering staffer was lifting a tray of untouched appetizers from a high top near the dance floor, loading it onto a rolling cart. Another staffer appeared from the kitchen and began stacking chafing dishes. The DJ's equipment went dark mid-song. The music cut out all at once. Andre was standing in the center of the room with a champagne flute in his hand and his mouth open mid-sentence, and he turned toward the DJ corner, then toward the bar, then toward the catering staff already moving in quiet, efficient formation through his party. His face went very still. The door burst open. Andre came through it fast, champagne flute still in his hand, his jaw set and his eyes already finding her across the small patio. Behind him, through the open door, she could see guests turning toward each other with confused faces. Someone laughed nervously. A woman near the cake table pressed her hand to her mouth. Danny dropped her phone into her purse and snapped it shut. What did you do? Andre's voice was tight, controlled, but barely. What you asked, she said. That's not... He stopped, looked back through the door, then at her. He lowered his voice, though there was nowhere to lower it to. 2 guests had already drifted toward the patio exit behind him, coats in hand, not looking at either of them. I meant step outside for a minute, get some air. I didn't mean... He gestured at nothing, at everything, at the empty bar and the dark DJ equipment and the catering staff visible through the window loading trays onto carts. This. You said leave, Danny said. You said it twice. Don't do that. Don't play word games with me right now. His voice cracked at the edges. The champagne flute was still in his hand and he seemed to realize it, setting it down hard on the nearest iron bench. You humiliated me. In front of everyone I know. You did this on purpose. I did exactly what you asked me to do, she said again. Same tone, same pace. You are unbelievable. He laughed, but there was nothing in it. This is insane, you know that? This is genuinely insane behavior. You're going to look. You have no idea how this looks for you. She held her purse with both hands and looked at him and didn't say anything. A couple moved past them through the patio exit, the woman's heels clicking on the pavement, both of them keeping their eyes straight ahead. I have to go deal with this. Andre pointed at her, the way he sometimes did when he wanted something to feel like a warning. We're going to talk about this. Okay, she said. He turned and went back inside. Lorraine found her 2 minutes later. She came out of the side door quietly, her purple wrap dress catching the string lights, her reading glasses pushed up on her head where she always put them when she forgot she was wearing them. She didn't look angry. She looked the way people look when something has touched a nerve they thought was long dead. Walk with me a minute, Lorraine said. They moved toward the parking lot without discussing it. The lot was half full, and guests were beginning to trickle out in pairs and small groups, their voices low. Inside, Danny could hear Andre's voice, louder than it needed to be, talking to what was probably the venue manager. They stopped near a concrete planter at the edge of the lot. Lorraine crossed her arms over her chest, not defensively, more like she was holding something in. "He's my son," Lorraine said. "I want you to know I know that." Danny waited. "That scene in there." Lorraine paused. She looked out toward the street, toward the parked cars and the dark beyond them. "The way he said it to you. The way he looked when he said it." She shook her head slowly. "I've seen that before. Not from him." She stopped again. "It felt very familiar to me. That's all I'm going to say tonight." Danny nodded. Lorraine uncrossed her arms and looked at her directly. "Are you all right to drive?" "Yes," Danny said. "Okay." Lorraine reached out and briefly touched her hand. Not a squeeze, not a grip, just a touch. Then she turned and walked back toward the venue to deal with her son. Danny drove home with the radio off. The house was exactly as she had left it that morning. The kitchen light was on because she always left the kitchen light on. Her laptop was closed on the counter. A coffee mug she hadn't finished sat on the drying rack, upside down. She set her purse on the kitchen table. She took off her heels and set them by the back door. Her feet were sore. She had been standing for 4 hours on polished concrete, and she hadn't noticed until now. She sat down, opened her laptop, and logged into her bank. Her personal savings account had $11,000.42 in it. Money she had put away from her own paychecks, quietly, over 2 years, into an account that had always been in her name alone. Andre knew it existed. He had never asked about the balance. She transferred it all. New account, her name only, a different institution. The transfer would clear in 1 business day. She confirmed it, logged out, and closed the laptop. She went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it standing at the counter. She heard nothing from outside. No car in the driveway, no headlights moving across the kitchen window. Andre was still at the venue, managing what was left of his night. She drank her water and listened to the quiet. Andre came downstairs at 7:15. He was dressed for work. Pressed shirt, dark slacks, the leather shoes he only wore when he had client meetings. He moved through the kitchen without looking at her, opened the refrigerator, stared into it for a moment, and closed it without taking anything out. Danny was already at the table with her coffee. She had been up since 5:30. He poured himself a cup from the pot she had made and leaned against the counter. He didn't sit. "I had to comp the venue $200, he said. "Out of my own pocket. The manager threatened to charge me for the full remaining hours." Danny wrapped both hands around her mug. "You put me in a position last night," he continued, "in front of people I've known for 15 years. My colleagues, my mother." He shook his head. "That's not something I'm going to forget." "Okay," she said. "That's all you have to say?" "You told me to leave, Andre." "I told you to get some air." His voice sharpened. "There's a difference. But you decided to make a scene instead of acting like an adult." She looked at him over the rim of her mug. He was looking at the window above the sink. The morning light was flat and gray, and it showed every bit of the tension in his jaw. "You embarrassed yourself," he said. "I hope you know that. That's how everyone saw it." She didn't answer. He finished his coffee, rinsed the cup, and set it on the drying rack directly on top of hers. "I'll be home late," he said. "Don't wait up." He picked up his keys and his bag and left. The back door closed firmly behind him. Not quite a slam, just a little harder than necessary. Danny listened to his car back out of the driveway. She listened to the sound of it moving down the street and then getting swallowed up by the ordinary noise of the neighborhood. Then she opened her laptop. She started with the tax return. She remembered it clearly. They had filed jointly in April, 11 months ago. The refund was $4,300. Andre had offered to handle it, said he'd put it directly toward the mortgage principal to get ahead of the schedule. She had said fine. She hadn't thought about it again. She pulled up the mortgage servicer's portal and scrolled through the payment history. April, May, June. Regular monthly payments, nothing more. Nothing marked as an additional principal payment. Nothing. She went to the joint checking account and filtered for April. The refund deposit was there, $4,300, landed on the 14th. She traced it forward. 14 days later, on the 28th, a transfer of $4,200 moved out of the account. She clicked through to the transfer record. She recognized the account number. She had found it 3 days ago on the old tablet, nested in a bank statement Andre had photographed and stored in the shared cloud folder for their taxes. It was the second account, the one in his name only, the one that had purchased the jewelry and the lingerie and the weekend at the lake house. She sat with that for a moment. Then she opened a new tab. The renovation fund had been her idea. 18 months ago, she had set up a joint investment account, low risk, meant to grow steadily. She had been adding to it a little every month with the goal of having enough to redo the kitchen and the downstairs bath within 5 years. Practical, patient, exactly the way she did most things. She logged in and pulled the full statement history. The deposits were all hers, her contributions, every one of them, regular as clockwork. The withdrawals were not hers. She went through them one by one, and she made herself go slowly. 9 withdrawals over 14 months. The smallest was $250. The largest was $1,100. Together, they added up to $5,840. She cross-referenced the dates with the records she had already pulled on the secret account. It took her 20 minutes. Every single withdrawal from the renovation fund landed in the secret account within 72 hours. No exceptions. She looked at the dates a second time. Then she looked at the record of purchases she had traced from the secret account. The jewelry, a silver bracelet and matching earrings, purchased from a boutique downtown in October. The lingerie order, shipped to an address that was not this house. The lake house rental in February, a long weekend, charged to the secret account on a Friday afternoon. October, January, February. She had been sitting across the table from him in October. She had watched him open the renovation fund statement when it came in the mail and set it aside without comment. She had trusted that he was reading it the same way she did, as their future. She closed the statement portal. She closed the mortgage account. She closed every tab until the screen was empty and clean. The full number sat in her head now, not as a hurt exactly, as a fact, the shape of what he had actually done. She opened her messages and found Patrice's name. "Can we meet tonight? I need to show you some things." She hit send. Then she closed her laptop. Outside, a car turned into the driveway. Patrice's office was on the 4th floor of a building downtown that smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. The kind of place that was always quiet after 6. The kind of quiet that made every sound feel deliberate. Danny took the elevator up alone. Patrice was waiting with the door propped open, still in her work clothes, cream blouse, reading glasses pushed up on her head, a yellow legal pad already on the desk in front of her. She took one look at Danny's face and didn't bother with small talk. "Sit down," she said. "Show me what you have." Danny sat. She opened her bag and laid everything on the desk in order. Printed bank statements, screenshots she had taken of the cloud folder and the text thread, the transfer records, the renovation fund withdrawal history, annotated in the margins with matching dates from the secret account. She had organized it all before leaving the house, sorted by category and clipped into 3 groups with binder clips she had pulled from her work bag. Patrice put her glasses on and read without speaking. The office was almost dark outside the desk lamp. Somewhere down the hall, a cleaning cart rolled past the door and kept going. After several minutes, Patrice set the last page down and looked at Danny over the rims of her glasses. "Okay," she said. "Here's where you stand. She laid one hand flat on the printed statements. The house is jointly titled. That means it's a marital asset, and neither of you can unilaterally force a sale or buyout without going through the court. That's a protection for you. She tapped the renovation fund withdrawal sheet. This account, the investment account you funded, that's marital property too, regardless of who was making the deposits. But these withdrawals? Transferred into an account he opened alone, used to fund a relationship outside the marriage? She shook her head. That's dissipation. A court will look at that. It will count. Danny nodded once. What about the tax refund? Same principle. If you can show the funds were diverted from their stated purpose into a secret account he was using for personal benefit outside the marriage, that's part of the dissipation claim. Patrice sat back. How long ago did he open the second account? 6 months. And the withdrawals from the renovation fund, when did those start? 14 months ago. Patrice made a note on her legal pad. So the financial pattern predates the account. That's useful. It suggests deliberate planning, not a one-time lapse. She looked up. Danny, you have strong documentation here. This is more organized than half the files I receive from professional paralegals. That's my job, Danny said simply. Patrice almost smiled. I know. She pulled the legal pad closer. I'm going to tell you what your options are, and then I need you to understand something. I can advise you, I can be your attorney, but I won't make moves without your direction. Every decision in this process stays yours. I know, Danny said. That's why I came to you. They talked for another 40 minutes, options and timelines, filing first and why timing mattered, full financial disclosure requirements, and how those requirements would force Andre to surface every account, every asset, every transfer. Patrice used clear words and drew a simple column of numbers to show Danny what a dissipation claim could recover. Danny listened to all of it. She asked 3 questions. She wrote nothing down on paper. She kept it where she had been keeping everything, inside, organized, filed. When she stood to leave, Patrice held on to the documents. I'll keep these in a client file, she said. Password protected, off-site, not at your house. Danny nodded. She picked up her bag. Are you okay? Patrice asked. I'm working on it, Danny said. Lorraine lived 20 minutes north, in the house where Andre had grown up. A 2-story brick house with a porch light that was always on, the kind of house that smelled like cedar and baked things no matter the hour. It was nearly 8 when Danny pulled into the driveway. Lorraine opened the door before she knocked. She was dressed in a cardigan and reading slippers, and she looked like she had been waiting rather than just awake. She stepped back and let Danny in without a word, the way people do when they've already decided the conversation needs to happen. They sat in the living room. Lorraine brought tea Danny didn't ask for and set it on the table between them. Then she sat down and folded her hands in her lap. Last night, she said, and then paused. When Andre told you to leave, she stopped again. She looked at the middle of the room rather than at Danny. Robert said something almost exactly like that to me, at his brother's retirement dinner, 1998. Her voice was even. She had told this story to herself long enough that most of the shake was gone from it. Told me I was making it awkward just by being there, that I should go home and let him enjoy the evening. She shook her head slowly. 2 years later, he was gone. For a woman 16 years younger. By then, I wasn't even surprised. The room was quiet. I didn't say anything last night because I didn't know what I knew yet, Lorraine said. I had to sit with it. Danny looked at her. And now? Lorraine held her gaze. Now I know what I'm looking at. She got up slowly and moved to the narrow secretary desk in the corner of the room. She opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a manila folder, the kind that gets soft at the corners from years in a drawer. She brought it back and set it on the table next to the tea. 3 years ago, Andre asked me to help him with some paperwork. Said he was setting up a consulting arrangement for side tax purposes. I co-signed something as a registered agent. I didn't fully understand it at the time, and I didn't ask enough questions. She pressed her fingers flat against the folder. I kept a copy of everything, the way I keep everything. She looked at Danny. I don't know if it means anything. Danny looked at the folder. May I? She asked. Lorraine pushed it toward her. Danny opened it. The top page was a state filing document, Articles of Organization, an LLC, formed 3 years ago with Andre listed as the sole member. A business address she didn't recognize. A registered agent line with Lorraine's name and signature at the bottom. She turned through the remaining pages slowly, reading each one. Danny left Lorraine's house at 9:47. She walked to her car with the folder tucked under her arm, the porch light at her back, and the cool night air pressing in around her like something that had been waiting for her to step into it. The folder sat open on the kitchen table. Danny had been at it for 2 hours. The LLC paperwork on the left, Andre's expense reports, 2 years' worth, pulled from the shared household filing cabinet where she kept everything, on the right. Her laptop open between them, a spreadsheet she had built from scratch in the first 40 minutes, columns labeled by date, amount, and source. The house was silent. Andre was still out. She didn't notice the silence anymore. She just read. The LLC was called ARX Consulting Group. Clean name. Professional. The kind of name that looked credible on an invoice without saying much of anything. The registered address was a mailbox service 2 towns over. The business description, listed in the Articles of Organization, was vague in the way only someone hiding something bothered to be vague. Management Consulting and Advisory Services. She had pulled Andre's expense reports from the last 2 years. He submitted them quarterly through his company's reimbursement portal. She had helped him log into that portal more than once when he forgot his password. She knew the format. She knew what the numbers were supposed to look like. She started with Q3, 2 years back. The quarter Lorraine said the LLC was formed. She found the first one 20 minutes in. A vendor reimbursement for Client Event Coordination Services. $850. Submitted and approved. The vendor name matched a variation of ARX, close enough to look like an acronym, different enough to miss on a quick review. She highlighted it in yellow. She kept going. There were 11 more over the following 6 quarters. Some small, 200, 350, some larger. One for just under 2,000, submitted the same month as the lake house rental she had found in the secret account. The invoices had been attached to each submission. Clean PDFs with ARX letterhead, professional formatting, and line items that described services vague enough to mean anything. He had billed his own company for work that didn't exist, collected the reimbursements, moved them through the LLC, used them to fund what he was building with Brianna. Danny sat with that for a moment. She had known about the affair for days now. She had known about the diverted tax refund, the renovation account, the secret account. She had mapped the shape of his betrayal carefully, the way she mapped everything, in columns and categories, dates and dollar amounts. But this was different. This wasn't just money taken from her. This was money taken from his employer, from Gregory Lawson's company, from a man who had trusted Andre with a regional sales operation and a corporate expense account and enough professional latitude to quietly run a fraud through it for 2 years. She made a note in the spreadsheet. 11 instances. Approximate total, $9,340. Then she closed the folder, stacked the expense reports in a neat pile, and clipped everything together. Andre came home at 10:30. He moved through the kitchen without looking at her directly, poured a glass of water, and stood at the counter like a man rehearsing something. "I've been thinking," he said. Danny waited. "I think we should have dinner at my mom's. The 3 of us. Keep it civil." He turned the glass slowly in his hand. "We're both adults. I want to handle this like adults. Talk through the next steps before anything gets formal." He said before anything gets formal, the way people say things they think sound reasonable but mean something else entirely. He meant before you talk to a lawyer, before you understand what you're entitled to, before you get ahead of me. "Okay," Danny said. He looked up. He had expected something else. Pushback, maybe. Tears. At minimum, a question. "Yeah?" he said. "Yes," she said. "Set it up with your mother and let me know the day." He nodded once, visibly recalibrating. Then he took his water and went upstairs. Danny sat at the kitchen table a little longer. She let him have the quiet. The next 2 days moved in careful order. She organized everything into a single folder on her personal laptop, password protected, backed up to a private cloud account Andre had never seen and had no access to. Bank records, the LLC formation documents, the expense report comparisons, annotated, screenshots of the text thread, the renovation account withdrawal history. Everything Patrice already had, duplicated here in clean, labeled files. On the second afternoon, she picked up her phone and called the main line for Lawson Regional Group. The receptionist answered on the second ring. "Hi," Danny said. Her voice was even, unhurried, the same voice she used when she called vendors to renegotiate terms. "I'd like to request a brief meeting with Gregory Lawson at his earliest availability. I have some documentation related to an expense matter I'd like to bring to his attention. It won't take long, 15 minutes at most." The receptionist put her on hold for less than a minute. "Mr. Lawson has availability Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Thursday was 2 days after the dinner. "That works perfectly," Danny said. "Thank you." She ended the call and set the phone down on the table. Then she texted Lorraine. "Dinner works. I'll be there. Thank you for the folder." Lorraine responded within a minute. "I'll make the pot roast. See you Wednesday." Lorraine's house smelled like pot roast and something floral. A candle on the sideboard, cream-colored, burning low. Danny arrived 7 minutes early. She had planned it that way. She wanted to see the table before Andre tried to arrange it. Lorraine met her at the door, wiping her hands on a dish towel, and pulled her into a brief hug that said more than either of them needed to put into words. She took Danny's coat. She did not ask how she was feeling. She just nodded once, the way women nod when they already understand, and led her inside. Andre was already at the table. He had his phone face down next to his water glass and his jacket still on, like he hadn't quite committed to being there. He looked up when Danny came in. His expression moved through something, surprise at the time, maybe, or the fact that she looked steady, and then settled into the version of himself he performed at work, measured, reasonable, slightly put upon, as if he were the one doing everyone a favor by showing up. "Hey," he said. "Hi," Danny said. She sat down across from him. She set her bag on the chair beside her. Lorraine brought a bread basket from the kitchen and put it at the center of the table without comment. She sat at the head, between them, and folded her hands. Andre cleared his throat. "So, I thought we could talk through the basics. Figure out how we want to handle the next few months. Keep things—" "I brought some things to go over," Danny said. She said it pleasantly, not as an interruption, just a fact offered calmly, like she was opening a meeting. She unzipped her bag and placed a small, neat stack of folders on the table. Andre looked at the folders. He looked at her. Something shifted behind his eyes, but he kept his voice smooth. "Danny, this is supposed to be a conversation, not a—" "It is a conversation," she said. "I just want to make sure we're working from the same information." She opened the first folder. "The hotel charge," she said. "February 14th, the Meridian in Clarksville. The same weekend you told me you were in Cincinnati for the Halverson account." She slid the bank statement across, clean rectangle of yellow highlighter. "This is from our joint account." Andre said nothing. She opened the second folder. "The savings account you opened in March of last year." She laid out 3 pages. "Transfers from your direct deposit before it hit the joint account. Jewelry, February and April. A weekend at the lake house in June. Lingerie, twice." She let a beat pass. "None of it was for me." "Danny, I also found the tax refund." She slid another page forward. $9,400. I thought it went to the mortgage principal. It went here. She tapped the account number on the statement. Andre leaned back in his chair. "You don't understand what you're looking at." "I work in financial operations," Danny said. "I've been reading documents like these for 11 years. Lorraine was very still at the head of the table. Danny opened the third folder. "The renovation account, the one I set up 3 years ago specifically for the kitchen and the back bathroom." She laid the withdrawal history flat on the table. 14 withdrawals over 13 months. I've matched 8 of them to dates in the text thread. Andre's jaw tightened. What text thread? The one between you and Brianna Holt, Danny said. On the old tablet, the one that was still synced to the cloud. The name hit the room differently than everything before it. It was one thing to see numbers on paper. It was another to hear the name said plainly at his mother's dinner table over pot roast and a cream-colored candle. Andre turned his head toward the window. The last folder, Danny said. She opened it slowly. ARX Consulting Group, registered 3 years ago. Mailbox address in Haverford. You listed the purpose as management consulting. She set the expense comparison sheet on top of the formation documents. 11 reimbursement claims submitted to Lawson Regional over 6 quarters. Total of approximately $9,340. Each claim invoiced through a variation of the LLC name. She paused. That money went through ARX and into the account you opened for her. The room held its breath. Andre's hand moved toward the papers. Those were legitimate. There were no services rendered, Danny said. I compared every invoice date to your calendar. I have your calendar. You don't know what you're talking about. His voice had changed. The measured, reasonable performance was cracking at the edges. You pulled some numbers and made a story out of them. This isn't Andre. It was Lorraine. She said his name the way mothers say it, when they are not asking for anything, when they are simply requiring silence. He stopped. Lorraine looked at her son for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet and very clear. Your father told me to leave a room full of people once. He said I was making things uncomfortable. He said he just wanted to enjoy his evening. She smoothed a crease in the tablecloth with one finger. I was 45 years old. I had given him 22 years. I sat in my car in the parking lot and I did not understand what was happening. She looked up. I am not going to sit here and watch you do the same thing to this woman. And I am not going to stay quiet about what I know. Not this time. Andre stared at his mother. He opened his mouth once, then closed it. Danny gathered the folders. She stacked them neatly, the way she stacked everything, and returned them to her bag. I wanted you to have the full picture before Patrice files, she said. She'll be submitting for divorce with full financial disclosure. Everything I've shown you tonight will be part of the record. She zipped her bag. That's all I needed to say. Andre pushed back from the table. His chair scraped against the hardwood floor, loud in the quiet house. He picked up his phone and his jacket without looking at either of them and walked to the front door. It opened. It closed. His car started in the driveway. Then it was gone. Lorraine let out a long breath. She reached over and picked up the breadbasket, selected a small roll, and set it on her plate like a woman who had just put something down she had been carrying for a very long time. You hungry? She asked. Danny looked at her. Something loosened, very slightly, in her chest. Yeah, she said. Actually, I am. Danny found the coffee shop on a Tuesday morning, 45 minutes before she needed to be there. She ordered a black coffee and chose a corner table near the window, away from the door, but with a clear line of sight to it. She set her bag down. She did not open it. She was not nervous. That surprised her a little, and then it didn't. Brianna came in at 9 on the dot. She was younger in person than the photo on the company website had made her look. Pretty, in the uncomplicated way of someone who had not yet had to work at it. She scanned the room with a small, uncertain expression, and when her eyes landed on Danny, something moved across her face. Recognition, then something closer to dread. She walked over anyway. Danny? She said. Hi. Danny gestured to the chair across from her. Sit down. Brianna sat. She did not take off her coat. She folded her hands on the table and held them there like a student waiting to be told how bad the grade was. "I'm not here to fight with you," Danny said. She said it plainly, not gently exactly, just as a fact to clear the air so they could move past it. Brianna nodded. She looked like she was trying to decide whether to believe it. "I just want you to know something," Danny continued. "Not because I want anything from you, because I think you should know." She didn't reach for her bag. She had decided she wouldn't need the documents for this. 6 months before the party, Andre sent you a message. She let Brianna sit with that for a second. The one where he said he needed to figure out the Danny situation after the birthday? Do you remember that? Brianna's expression shifted. Her jaw softened. He said he was going to talk to you, that he was going to end things properly. He said he needed to figure out the situation, Danny said. Not end it. Figure it out, like it was a scheduling problem. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. That message was sent 11 months ago. He had already been moving money for 3 months by then. He had plans that didn't include telling me anything before he was ready. Brianna was quiet. He wasn't trying to leave me for you, Danny said. He was building an exit ramp. He needed somewhere to land after he'd already arranged everything in his favor. You were the soft landing. That's different. The words were not cruel. Danny made sure of that. She said them the way she would explain a ledger discrepancy, calmly, clearly, without editorializing, because the facts were already enough. Brianna looked down at the table. A muscle in her jaw worked once. I didn't know about the money, she said quietly. I know, Danny said. Brianna looked up. Her eyes were bright, not with tears exactly, but with the particular shine of someone recalculating everything at once. She left the coffee shop 12 minutes after she arrived. She had not ordered anything. Danny sat with her coffee for another few minutes. She finished it. Then she picked up her bag and walked out into the morning air, and the door swung shut behind her. Brianna ended it with Andre that same afternoon. Danny did not know this directly. She found out later, the way you find out things that have already stopped mattering, after the fact, in passing. What she did know was that by that evening, Andre had called her twice and left no messages. She set her phone face down on the kitchen counter and made dinner. Gregory Lawson's office was exactly what she had expected. Dark wood, golf trophies on a credenza, a framed photo of him with someone in a stadium she didn't recognize. The kind of room that was supposed to feel important and succeeded mostly at feeling old. Lawson himself was courteous and a little formal, the handshake brisk, the offer of coffee genuine. He was a man who respected procedure, which was precisely why Danny had called him. She sat down, opened her bag, and placed the documentation on his desk. She did not walk him through it with commentary or emotion. She simply organized the pages in the order that made the pattern clearest. The LLC formation documents, the invoice dates, the reimbursement claims, the account transfers, and let him read. He read quietly for several minutes. His expression did not change dramatically, but at some point his hands stilled on the page, and he looked up at her with careful eyes. Mrs. Calloway Reeves, he said, I want to make sure I'm understanding the timeline correctly. I can walk you through it, she said. She did. He asked 2 clarifying questions. He took a note. He thanked her for coming in. 3 days later, Andre was suspended pending internal review. On the same morning, Patrice filed. The divorce petition landed at the county clerk's office at 8:47 a.m., with full financial disclosure attached. Every account, every transfer, the LLC, the expense records, all of it entered into the official record before Andre had any room to move what was left. By noon, Danny's phone showed 2 calls. Patrice's office first. Filing confirmed. He's been served. Then Lawson's assistant, brief and professional. Mr. Lawson wanted you to know the review has been formally opened, and Mr. Reeves has been placed on suspension, effective this morning. Danny stood in her kitchen. The afternoon light came through the window over the sink and lay flat across the counter. She set her phone down. She exhaled once, slow, controlled, the way you breathe after you've been holding something heavy for a very long time and have finally set it on solid ground. The sign went up on a Wednesday. It wasn't large, clean white lettering on a dark background, mounted flush above the glass door. Callaway Creative, Event Planning and Consulting. The installer had done a good job. The letters were level. Danny stood on the sidewalk for a moment and looked at it, her keys in her hand, the morning air still cool against her face. Then she unlocked the door and went to work. The office was small, but hers in a way that no room had ever been before.
2 desks, one for her, one for the assistant she'd hired in the spring. A round table near the window where she met clients. Shelving along one wall holding binders organized by event type. Each one color-coded, each one built from a system she had been quietly perfecting for 9 years, without anyone noticing. Andre had noticed none of it. That used to sting. Now it just seemed useful. Proof that she had always been the one doing the work, which meant she was also the one who got to keep it. The settlement had been fair, more than fair once Patrice presented the full financial disclosure and the dissipation evidence to the mediator. The marital home sold quickly, in a good market. Half of that, plus the renovation fund that Patrice had clawed back through the divorce decree, had given Danny enough to lease the office, cover a year of operating expenses, and still have a cushion she had never had when she was married. She had not thought of it as a gift. She had thought of it as repayment. Lorraine called on Tuesday mornings now, without fail. Not to talk about Andre. They rarely did. She called to ask how the business was going, to pass along the name of someone from her church who needed a retirement party coordinated, to report on the tomatoes she was growing in her backyard with mixed results. Last month she had come in person and sat at the round client table with a cup of tea and watched Danny run through a full vendor negotiation on speakerphone, and when it was over, Lorraine had nodded once and said quietly, "You were always the sharp one." Danny had not said anything, but she had kept that. Andre, from what she understood, was in a one-bedroom apartment 20 minutes from the house they used to share. The internal investigation at the company had taken 6 weeks and concluded without ambiguity. The expense fraud was documented, systematic, and not small. He was terminated. His industry was not large, and Gregory Lawson was well connected within it, and the termination had not been quiet. He found work eventually, a smaller company, a regional role with a reduced territory, a title that would have embarrassed him 2 years ago. She did not track these things. They reached her the way water finds low ground, through Lorraine, through a mutual contact mentioning something in passing, through the ambient drift of information that moves through a shared life even after the life is no longer shared. She had not spoken to him since the divorce was finalized. His text came in at 6:12 in the evening, on what would have been their 10th anniversary. She was still at her desk, the lamp on, reviewing 3 event proposals for a corporate client who needed a company retreat coordinated for 60 people in the fall. Good work. Detailed, interesting work that required exactly the kind of thinking she had spent a decade doing for free. Her phone lit up on the corner of the desk. She picked it up. The message was short. Vague in the specific way of someone who wants to open a door but doesn't want to be seen reaching for the handle. "Hope you're doing well. Thinking about you today." She read it once. That was enough to understand what it was. Not an apology, not an explanation. Just a man sitting alone in a small apartment on a date that still meant something to him, reaching for the familiar warmth of someone who had made his life run, and hoping she might still be available for it. She set the phone face down on the desk. She picked up the retreat proposal and kept reading. The document was thorough. The client wanted a 2-day off-site with team-building activities, a formal dinner on the second evening, and accommodation for a handful of remote employees flying in from out of state. There were logistics to solve, vendors to contact, a budget that needed careful watching. She pulled her notepad close and started writing. By 8 o'clock, she had notes on all 3 proposals. She closed her laptop. She capped her pen and set it beside the notepad. She stood, stretched, and reached for her coat. Before she turned off the desk lamp, she glanced at the wall calendar. A habit, the last check of the day. Next Friday was marked in red, her business's 1-year anniversary. She had planned a small event for the occasion, nothing elaborate, just the people who had helped her build this. Lorraine was coming, Patrice was coming, her assistant had already ordered a cake. The details were handled. She had handled them herself. She turned off the lamp. She turned off the overhead light. She locked the door on her way out, and the sign above the entrance caught the glow of the street light as she walked to her car. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I've got 2 stories on the screen that you have to watch next. Have a great day!